So thank you for that introduction. And that previous presentation, how amazing was that? So I have a literature festival, you have a book coming up. This is what I spend my life doing. I mean, I love books. One of the reasons why I started the literature festival was I'm actually just a complete groupie. So I go along to things and I meet people and I'm really, really uncool. I'm one of those people, I sort of go up to them and I say, I love you, I love your books, come to my festival. And Idna, who's been working with me for the last 3 years, spends a lot of time scooping me up off the floor and saying, don't do that, it's really uncool. We run a festival, you should be a little bit more cool about it. And I'm just like, no, this person is like God. So hence the reason for the literature festival. So as you've already been told, we set the festival up 3 years ago now, 3.5 years ago. And we've just had the third festival. So we've kind of had 3.5 because we decided to launch this in 2014. And at the time when we sort of thought about it, we thought, actually, we need to do it next year because we want to have a summer festival. And then we thought, it's a little bit of a long time, and we want all these people to sort of, give us a bit of money to make it happen. And so we thought, we'll do something to sort of try it out. So we did a launch in 2014, and then since then, we've carried on going. We've just had a third festival. There are a number of reasons why we set the festival up. One of the big things was actually about the city itself. How many people actually know Bradford? Oh, well, a few hands going up, which is great. How many of you actually been to Bradford? Yay. So I work on the basis that Bradford is just, we're the center of the world. So I keep saying to people, well, we're in the center of the country. I get this thing from people in London all the time where you sort of say to them, come on to the festival, and they say, Bradford, so where's that? And I just say, oh, just around the corner. It's not far at all, but we sort of, when we talked about setting the festival up, one of the big reasons was actually the city and the narrative around the city. So those of you who sort of know a little bit about Bradford will know Bradford has had its share of, shall we say, interesting press. So when people talk about Bradford, these are some of the things that we've sort of heard. So this was the city that had the race riots. It was the city that burnt the satanic verses. And, I'm Muslim, so the number of people who spent, oh my God, you're a Muslim woman and you're in a literature festival in Bradford, and you burnt the satanic verses. And I think, not me personally. But, we're still in that narrative, and it was one of the things that we wanted to move away from. So we decided to set this literature festival up to change the narrative of the city, because what I want is when people think about the city, they think about the literature festival rather than the issues that we've had in the past. So to me, this is a city, and I think it's a beautiful place. But one of the things about negativity is, if you talk about something often enough, people believe it. And Bradford has had this, I say, the people who took Bradford down the most are the people who live there, because they've sort of bought into this thing of, we constantly have to prove ourselves, and we have to say how good we are, and, everybody's kind of, out to get us. But actually, there is a certain narrative. I remember having a really interesting conversation with a Guardian journalist who, it was kind of, about 18 months ago, and we just had some women go off to Syria, and somebody had just been murdered, and a teacher had just been stabbed, and she rang me up, she said, can I come talk to you? I said, yeah, of course. And we came and we had this conversation, and she said, so what is it about Bradford? What is it about Bradford that makes these things happen? And I said to her, all these things happen in all these other places, and we don't talk about what is it about these other cities that's making these things happen. So we wanted to change this narrative that was out there. And one of the reasons why I really, really wanted to do that was children. So, I have a daughter, I have a 14-year-old, and so about 3.5 years ago, when I said to her, I'm going to set up a literature festival, and she said to me, really? In Bradford? She said, no. Mum, we don't have literature festivals in Bradford. And to me, that was just so wrong. That isn't how any child should be relating to their city. They should actually be really proud of their city. So, and I thought it was really, really important that this happened in the city, because we do have some of the worst schools in the country. Our literacy levels are low. we've had issues in the past. You know, things like the race riots don't just happen. They happen because there are a certain set of conditions out there. People are feeling disconnected, they're not economically engaged. Before I set this up, I spent a couple of years doing some work for the local college, looking at their marketing strategies and, you know, looking at long-term things like, you know, what are the jobs of the future and who's going to access them and all that kind of thing. And one of the things that really struck me was that, yes, there are going to be jobs in the future, but actually most of the people who are living in this city, probably a lot of those children were never going to get those jobs because they were never going to have the skills. Because actually, if you haven't even got the literacy levels, if you can't even engage with the curriculum in any kind of way, you're never going to get anywhere, and that's what creates problems. So for me, all of that came together in this idea of the Literature Festival, and I have to say, I have to confess, a friend of mine he used to be head of film at the National Media Museum, and they used to run a film festival, and every time we had a coffee, he would sort of talk about this film festival. In the end, I said to him, God, you need to stop talking about this. I'll help you do this festival. And I did, and it was absolutely awful. It was like one of those experiences where you think, oh, I'm not going to do that again. But from that came the idea of the festival. So we had this idea, but of course, as any of you know who've had an idea, you can't just make things happen without getting some support behind you. So, I mean, now that we are in our third year, we've had, you know, people come along and get behind the idea, and that's kind of what's driving it, both from a financial point of view, but also from a cultural perspective as well, from the point of view of the programming that we do. And just to sort of show you where we are. So this year, we've just had the third festival, and we had just over 50,000 people come along, and which was great. And about 12,000 of that came out of our schools program. And the thing that is different about the festival, and the thing that I was really keen to create was, I go to a lot of festivals. I don't know how many of you do sort of go to literature festivals or any other festivals, but festivals have a very particular demographic. And you have to have money to go to a festival and to engage with it. And also, the makeup of most festivals is, it comes from a certain section of society, and everything else is sort of tagged on. So, you know, we talk about diversity and we talk about how important it is, but with most festivals, they don't really quite know how to do it. So it's kind of tagged on at the end, and, you know, there's a thing over here, there's an LGBT panel, or there's something over here for, you know, the South Asian community or whatever community, and they're kind of self-contained little things. So one of the things that's really different about this festival is that when we sort of thought about what the festival should look like, we sort of looked at the city. So, as was said earlier, Bradford is a city of sanctuary. It took in over half the Syrian refugees who came into the country, but there is also our history. So we've had successive waves of migration. So we had a massive Irish wave of migration back in the 1800s. We had a really big wave of migration from Jewish merchants who settled in the city. So we've actually got a really rich Jewish heritage. A big wave of migration from Eastern Europe. So we've got a settled Polish and Ukrainian community, then the South Asian wave, which is actually what the city is sort of really well known for now. And then, you know, now we've got, again, a growing Eastern European population. We have one of the biggest Roma communities in the country. So it's actually a real mix. And when we sort of thought about this, we thought, actually, if we were to program for everybody who is actually in this city, we would be programming for the world. And we thought that actually changes the narrative of the city. We can stop talking about, because actually, you know, one of the things, and I say this to the city council as well, the city isn't proud of its population. And one of the things that I keep saying to them is, you have to own this. This is the city, this is our city, this is the makeup of it. And actually, instead of being sort of, we've got all these Asian people and all these other people, and what do we do with all of this? Which is kind of a little bit of the narrative that we're having as a country at the moment. You know, where do we go with all of this big mix that we've got now? And some people are really unhappy about it, and some people, you know, think, yes, I'm okay with this, but actually, half of us aren't talking to the other half who are unhappy about it, or the ones who are okay about it. But this is actually as it is, so something has to be done about it. So actually with the festival, it was, for me, it was actually also about looking at the city and saying, let's stop talking about diversity. We are an international city. We have people here from around the world. And actually, if we talk to all of these populations we have in this city, we'll be talking to the rest of the world. And we'll be talking about all the issues that are going on in our country today. So, I mean, a lot of the issues that happen, you know, tend to sort of come and... I'm just flicking through the slides because I'm just sort of giving you an overview of the festival as we go along. But for me, a lot of the issues that have been happening, so whether it's you know, what we've seen happening with Brexit or, you know, Joe Cox was my MP. So when that happened, you know, it was personal, it felt personal. You know, not personal in the way that it would have done to her family, but, you know, I'd met her, she was my MP, she'd actually really sort of encouraged me about the festival, and then, you know, and then she got stabbed. And I, you know, and I'll always remember the moment when I actually heard about that. I was on a train down to London, and it was just one of those moments when you feel the world has changed again. You know, these things keep happening. Or whether it's, you know, with all the issues around ISIS and radicalization. So many of these things actually come back into cities like Bradford, and Bradford has had the dubious honor of being mentioned in connection to these things all the time. And one of the things that I felt was really, really important was that we needed to see the elephant in the room and start talking about these things. So one of the main focuses, one of the things that I really focus on with the programming of the festival is actually those issues that nobody will talk about, the things that are really, really difficult, the things that we're actually all skirting around, and we know that there is an issue there, but we're refusing to talk about it, and that then leads to, you know, we're all in our little bubbles, and we all we follow the people that we like on Twitter, and we don't want to follow the others, and we're friends with our friends on Facebook, and we don't necessarily want to see what else is going on there. And then when, you know, Bradford was one of the cities that, you know, we are a city of sanctuary, but we were one of the cities that voted to leave the EU. So, you know, clearly we are actually uncomfortable with the identity that we've got. So all of these things, and I feel that that's actually really, really important. So we talk about all of these issues in the festival. And like I said, you know, we have a really big schools program, and one of the things that I'm really focused on is making sure that as much of the main festival program that can be translated into the schools program as possible. The other thing that's really different about the festival is not just the things like, you know, the fact that we have, so we, you know, our audience this year was 48-49% BAME, which is unheard of for festivals, because that's the programming. That's because 42% of the artists who are in the festival are actually from BAME backgrounds. And that's important because people need to see themselves reflected, and actually and people need to engage with the, you know, you need to actually hear about the things that you don't know about. We can't just keep talking to ourselves. But what the festival also does is, the festival is free. If you are on benefits, if you live in social housing, if you are a refugee or asylum seeker, if you are over the age of 65, if you're a full-time student, the festival is completely free. So you pay, I mean, our tickets are quite cheap anyway, but you pay about a third of the ticket price, and once you've attended the event, that gets refunded. And to me, that's really, really important, because I feel that the people who actually really need to engage with festivals like this, where you're actually talking about things, are the people who never get to go, or the people who feel that the festival, you know, a literature festival, that's not for me. When we, you know, when we talked about having sort of a literature festival, one of the first things that I was told was, oh, no, you don't want a literature festival in Bradford, no one's going to come. And I said, you know, we have this great literary heritage, we are the home of the Brontes. I've also decided we are the home of King Arthur, because did you know that Camelot is actually just outside Bradford? Bet you didn't know that. But it is, it's under a golf course just outside Bradford. And it's actually been proven. This isn't just me making it up. So I have decided that we are the spiritual home of King Arthur. So we've actually had a strand of King Arthur events this year, which I've been hugely excited by. And I was actually talking to a poet, this is a couple of nights ago, and he said to me, oh, you should knight people. And I was like, oh my God, what a brilliant idea. We're going to have Knights of the Round Table. So, that next installment. But one of the, you know, that was something that was said to me. It was like, you know, you should be a book festival, because, you know, if it's a literature festival, it's too highbrow. And I was like, well, that's exactly the reason why a city like Bradford, which has, you know, the literary heritage of the Brontes and J.B. Priestley and Andrea Dunbar and now King Arthur, should actually have a literature festival. And, you know, and the festival is very much, now I sort of work on the basis, it's the written and spoken word in its widest format, and as far as I'm concerned, that's everything. So, you know, I say to everyone, if there's a book about it, we can talk about it. And I just work on the basis that there is nothing in the world that there isn't a book about. And as far as I'm concerned, you know, film, theatre, music, you just peel that top layer back, and what you've got is words. So it's all in the festival. But, you know, the thing that we try to do really hard is actually to, while we are, you know, the big aim of the festival is to be an international destination festival. That is about the city. That is about the city's economic regeneration and its visitor economy and pulling people back in. But the other thing is actually about making sure that the people within the city benefit. So this evening, for example, that we had was, it was a South Asian women's group who had decided to get together and create a book. But, you know, the thing that you find with these kinds of settings is that a lot of these women might never get to go to a mainstream space. And the festival actually pulls them away from the normal spaces that they will occupy, and actually brings them into the center, and then everybody sort of mixes. And for me, that's really, really important. And in terms of, you know, where do we want to get to? I mean, headlines like this are really, really nice. You know, are we on the brink of a cultural renaissance and, you know, all of this kind of thing? But for me, what's really important is that the festival creates a lasting change. So, like I said, you know, we have a really big schools program, and it's sort of growing year upon year because the festival is obviously only 3 years old. So we have all these big dreams that we want to achieve. But what I would like is that every child actually gets to participate in the festival. So this year we had about 12,000 school children go through the different sort of schools events that we had within the festival. And then we do these big sort of free family fun days, which are really designed to pull in the people who won't think that a festival is for them, the parents who are never going to take their children to anything that has sort of literature on it. And there's two purposes there, really. The schools program is there because if the children are being brought in through school, then they'll take their parents along as well. Because one of the things that I think is really, really important and that we need to recognize is that with literacy, it is not just about the classroom. And I think that's not a message that probably anybody here is going to disagree with, but most people will send their children to school, and a lot of them will actually think, that's it, job done. And that's especially true when you think about the estates and, you know, the deprived areas. And for me, the biggest thing is actually, it's about deprivation. You know, we sort of, I mean, we're funded by the Arts Council, and the Arts Council talk about the, you know, the creative case for diversity, and there's a really big push around diversity and sort of having people from BAME backgrounds involved and all of that wonderful stuff. Of course, I tick that box really nicely. But for me, actually, and this is something that I keep saying to them, it's not actually necessarily about people's cultural backgrounds. It's actually just about how much money do you actually have. You know, we sort of did a bit of an analysis on the festival this year, and a lot of the people who came probably had as little as £9 a week to spend on cultural activities. They might have a family of 4 or 5. And to me, that's, you know, that's the biggest thing. I'm sort of second generation. My parents were first generation into this country, and what is quite typical with first generation is that you have this myth of going home. So my father spent his entire life saying he was going to go back home. And then, bless him, he passed away here, and it was just kind of like, oh, well. But I spent the first 8 years of my life shuttling backwards and forwards from the UK to Pakistan and back again. It was just like, my mum couldn't quite make up her mind. And then we came back when I was 8, and we had some good family friends, bless them, and said to her, look, you just need to stop doing this. Either stay in England or go to Pakistan and just stay there, but otherwise she's not going to get an education. But when I came back to England when I was 8, I'd lost all my English, and my mother doesn't speak English. So I was sent to a language centre, and I was there for 2 terms. I went to, you know, junior school, and when I got there, they were just having their end-of-term tests, and I got 34 in my English vocab and 98 in my maths. And the next year, I got 99 in my English vocab. And the reason was my mother took me to the library. You know, very religiously, every Saturday, I was taken to the library. And it was that habit that stayed with me for the rest of my life. But that was what made the difference. And what made the difference in my life was that despite the fact that my mother didn't speak English, she was educated, and she pushed me. And actually, that's what a lot of children lack. So, you know, we've just seen Malala Yousafzai's photograph up there. But, you know, she's got parents behind her. She's got a father who's pushing that. And what we find is that in a lot homes, you know, which are on the estates, and that's regardless of what background people are coming from. That push isn't there because parents are just sending the kids to school. They think that that's their job done, and there isn't that push. So the education is actually on both sides. It's actually for those children, but it's also about parents learning that literacy is not just about the classroom. So that's really what the festival is about. That's been a bit of a hodgepodge, but really, I mean, it takes place every year now, 10 days. We've just had 10 days, 300 events, about 70 events for schools. And, you know, it's been really well received. We've been, it's been great because, you know, I hold Hay up as the model. And Peter Florence from Hay said, you know, we're one of the most inspirational festivals in the country. And I was like, yes, nearly fell off my chair. And then, you know, Edinburgh was, you know, this is the festival that the UK's literary circles are talking about. And that was like, yes, that's great. But then the thing that's actually just really inspiring is when we get school teachers coming along and they say, these children would never set foot in a university normally because they would not see it as being their space. But through the schools program, they've come in and there's just been that little seed that's been dropped that might make a difference. And that's the festival. Thank you.